Screamo is back, baby. Haven't you heard? Skramz fever is sweeping the nation. This long-forgotten punk subgenre has found a new home in the hearts and minds of 2020 Zoomers, and I would have never predicted it. The beautiful tornado going on in the Screamo community right now isn't happening silently. Nuh-uh. In its wake lies an anomaly, a series of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Today's video is all about the Modern Screamo Paradox. When I refer to early Screamo bands, I'm not talking about the beta little twink cuck bands like The Used or Attack Attack. I'm talking about the alpha Chad Stallion bands out there like Page 99 and Jerome's Dream. Now it's these Screamo forefathers that were given birth in the late 90s, early 2000s. Because against all odds, the diametrically opposed emo scene and hardcore worlds of the time would coalesce to create this new style. Fans and journalists alike would agree that this new style is now going to be dubbed Screamo because it was like emo but with screaming. Get it? Now, admittedly, this is a little dismissive to the history of the genre because screaming has always been at least tangentially adjacent to emo, all the way back to the 80s with Rites of Spring and the like. Now, it wouldn't take a long time for the term Screamo to get appropriated by outsiders. They would use it to describe any kind of music that had screaming in it. Like, oh, my cousin told me all about this band, this Screamo stuff that you guys are into. Have you heard about Slipknot? To quell this, scene kids started referring to the good stuff as Skramz. Because now the term Screamo just didn't carry the same weight that it once did in these DIY spaces. Legend has it that Alex Bigman of the band coined the term half-jokingly on a forum he modded for called CMHWAK, Cross My Heart with a Knife. Have you ever heard anything more emo than that? Cross my heart with a knife. CMHWAK. Rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? It wasn't about being catchy, it was about being sad. The term Skramz was just kind of an example of the ironic XD humor of the time. Lol, ooh woo, Skramz! The term would be used ironically for a while until it naturally became a permanent fixture in the emo lexicon. Right where it belongs, I'll tell you that much for free. However, somewhere along the timeline, the Screamo OGs dropped the burning torch. And while doing so, they burned down everything that they built. From the ashes of the once great musical style, it began morphing into some ungodly abominations that are best left forgotten to time. Like crunkcore. If you remember bands like Broken Side, Blood on the Dance Floor, and Millionaires, you know this trend came and went faster than a fart in a summer breeze. The equally egregious example taking form parallel to that was that of the post-hardcore Warped Tour bands. I unaffectionately call this style of music Warped Core. Bands in the vein of Asking Alexandria, Escape the Fate, and the two Veil bands, Black Veil Brides and Pierce the Veil. You know the beat. Total mainstream trash. Exactly what Screamo has always been railing against. So now, Screamo's been rotting in the sun for over 2 decades. That is, until now. Luckily, the youth of the 2020s have picked up and reignited the fiery Screamo torch of old. In doing so, they have given Skramz a whole new lease on life. From what I can tell, the genre seems a lot healthier now than it did in its inception over 20 years ago. It seems to have finally carved out a unique identity all of its own. There is now hope where there was once nothing but F-slurs. After listening to the current crop of bands, there's a strange sense of nostalgia you'll feel mixed with the excitement of discovering new bands. This creates the paradox. I've yet to encounter a paradox like this in any other genre or medium. You feel transported back in time, yet simultaneously locked in the current moment. There's nothing like that. This is a new feeling. There's something special happening in Skramz right now. Hey, my name is Dan Frampton, and I make videos about punk rock and DIY culture right here on YouTube. And at night, I've been doing these live streams where I've been sharing these new bands with my chat. It's during these live streams that the Modern Screamo Paradox started to reveal itself to me. Now let me be clear, I don't think that I have the solution to this mystery, but I do believe that I have a pretty good game theory as to what might be causing it. To get there, first we gotta identify what the Modern Screamo Paradox even is. Nostalgia and isolation are the two main cruxes of this paradox. First, let's talk about nostalgia. Nostalgia on its own can be a very complicated emotion that's normally triggered by experiencing something very specific from your past, leaving you with lingering feelings of a simpler time. In the case of this paradox, however, that is not the case. Nostalgia is being triggered by something new and fresh. That's not how it's supposed to work. That's a contradiction. This new crop of bands have harnessed the technical elements of the genre that the forefathers laid down, and they're mixing it with a certain kind of rage that can only exist in post-pandemic Zoomers. Which leads us directly to the next gigantic crux of this paradox: isolation. It can't be overstated how big of a role isolation plays in this paradox, because it shines a light on another contradiction. Through isolation, a community was formed. Togetherness? None of which would have blossomed had it not been for the isolation created by the pandemic. Listen, I couldn't imagine what it's like being locked up during your coming of age. While everyone was doom scrolling from home while locked up, clips of hardcore shows started to go viral on TikTok. So it's easy for me to see that once doors opened back up, there would be hordes of eager fans waiting to line the halls of the hardcore shows that they saw on social media. Through all the trends that come and go in the underground, hardcore endures. Hardcore was there. Hardcore will continue to be there. But the one thing you don't see online when observing the hardcore scene is the tight-knit, highly regulated code of conduct that is expected to be respected and adhered to at all times. After you attend a few shows, you'll start to notice the rules and regulations of punk rock found in hardcore spaces. Online, you see wild mosh pits and crazy stage dives. But in real life, if you do the wrong dance move to the wrong song part, you run the risk of pissing off the wrong people. This strange, unwritten tablet of rules is not what attracts people to punk rock, bro, and more specifically, the DIY side of things. When observed, DIY should be the exact opposite of what is actually presented in the real world. It's like, hey, we celebrate DIY, but you gotta do DIY our way. The emotion and rage that comes out when playing Screamo simply can't be tethered by such rules. So, who exactly is responsible for this Modern Screamo Paradox? Simply put, and obviously so, it's the bands. When I hear the sounds that LA band One Way Mirror are making, I'm expecting them to look, let's say, of a certain vintage. But instead, I'm presented with this, the paradox. Literal fucking children just out here killing it. Then, if I set my gaze just 30 degrees in the opposite direction, I see another LA band called Knumears. They have the technical proficiency of musicians 3 times their age and experience level. That's the paradox, people. Now, I've heard of child prodigies in all sorts of disciplines. In music, in martial arts, in sports, you name it. It's normally a rarity, but in the Screamo scene, it seems like there's 100 child prodigies. It boggles my mind, bro. Like, you're not supposed to be this good yet. I'm picturing a dojo with the Skramz forefathers and foremothers practicing drills and running classes. Not only are these kids good, but they're packing rooms night after night with passionate fans. Everything that DIY represents is accounted for, and then some. Which begs the question, if the kid Zoomers are this good, how good must the adult Zoomers be? Let me tell you folks, you're not ready for how good these bands are. I'm not gonna turn this video into a top 10 list or anything like that. Instead, I'm gonna focus on the 4 main bands that I think have the power and potential to kickstart a real fucking sad and angry revolution. We'll call them the 4 pillars of Modern Screamos. The first of which is another SoCal band called Versus Self. They kicked 2020 off with a demo, and then shortly after that, an LP. With over 300,000 monthly listeners, that makes Versus Self the largest pillar. They might actually be the most complete Screamo package out there as it pertains to dynamics, range, and ability. Equally as awesome, but much more slept on, we gotta head to Denton, Texas to check out Party Hats. Every Screamo conversation these days is a one-way ticket to destination Party Hats. The artistry on display with Party Hats is what knocks me off my ass with this band. Sure, they got the riffs and the songs and the aggression, but it's the assembly of all those parts that set Party Hats apart from their counterparts. One listen to their 2023 EP Autobiographic Autopsy and you'll see exactly what I mean. Without turning this into a total Party Hats glaze fest, let's turn our attention to the third pillar, Tijuana, Mexico's own Habak. Habak might be the most tenured pillar on this list because they've been around since about 2015 or so. They don't necessarily run in the same circles with the other pillars, but Habak have an aura about them that embodies this paradox perfectly. They possess the DIY spirit in everything they do. The relentless tour schedule, the near yearly drops of splits, EPs, and albums. All of that would be enough to get them a spot on this list, but it's their charisma, dedication, and energy that really cranks things up a notch. All of this brings us to our 4th and final pillar. My new favorite band, Catalyst. I could spend all day waxing poetic about this Rhode Island rock and roll outfit, but we're staying focused on the paradox. Quite simply, Catalyst is the coolest. They're growing so fast right now, and it's not hard to see why. Their love for this style of music radiates and ricochets off of everything around them. If I'm putting my chips all in on any band right now, it's definitely Catalyst. And you might be asking yourself, okay, that's great, but what do the pillars have to do with the paradox? And it's quite simple. There would be no paradox if it weren't for the pillars. It is the existence of the pillars that creates the paradox. Without the pillars, it's just a funny little idea that could bounce around anyone's little noodle. If we put geographic pins in the map that represent where these bands are from, the pillars become obvious. Now we have a whole ass paradox theory. And here we are. Here's where it all comes together. To understand where I'm coming from with this paradox, we need to direct our attention back to the hardcore world for just a moment. The hardcore scene can sometimes feel more like mob territories. And because of the gang-like way that the hardcore scene feels sometimes, I believe that to be the direct cause and effect of why the Skramz scene is booming right now. The DIY hall monitors that line the corridors of hardcore shows drove these pent-up, angry, emotional little nerds into DIY spaces of their own. And with that came this new sense of freedom that allowed the scene to get the nourishment it needed to become the based and badass Screamo scene we see today. If you combine that mob element with the nostalgia, isolation, and the pillars I illustrated earlier in this video, it becomes increasingly harder to ignore the elephant in the room that is the Modern Screamo Paradox. It shouldn't exist, but it does. Not only do I believe the paradox to be real, but I believe we're just scratching the surface of what's possible today. With modern modes of archiving the culture, this era stands to be the defining era of the genre. One archivist is doing a particularly amazing job covering the scene, and that's Hot Stuff Productions. Most of the B-roll that you saw in this video came from them. Without their important work of documenting all of this, the paradox would go unnoticed. With their great work now sharing and participating in this Skramz community is now easier than ever, even easier than it was back in the day. The vast amount of talent and fans packing these spaces right now is an object reality. There's something special happening in Skramz right now, and it shows no signs of letting up. Hey, huge thank you to you for watching this video. I don't normally do this whole video essay type thing, so it's a bit of a different vibe here on the channel. But when I had this thought, I had no other way of expressing it other than typing it out and then doing it in this fashion. And like I said earlier in this video, I watch these sets live at night with my chat during live streams. So if that sounds sick to you, hit subscribe and come back at night when we do these watch-along streams. Right now, we're in the middle of a world tour where we're going scene to scene, town to town, until we see every scene out there in the world. So far, we've been to Washington, China, St. Louis, Richmond, Virginia, Osaka, Japan, North Carolina, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. Oh, also Colorado. We might do Florida, Texas, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Ohio next. So stop by sometime. We'd love to have you. It's the best chat on YouTube, and I stand by that. Hit like, press subscribe, and until my next upload, watch another upload. Oh my God. Whew.